Good morning. Um, Hope you are all doing well. Today we're going to start with Unit 4. Okay. Now, I know you're going to say we already covered inequalities, but what we're doing right now is doing everything by hand. So, again, we're going to start with the scales. And this means that we're solving everything by hand. And I believe we already did these more than 5 months ago. So I just want to take the opportunity that we're doing this from home so you can recall all this. That way we can continue with our rest of our topics, okay? Because it is very important that you know how to solve for one variable. So when we talk about inequalities, and since we're going to be graphing, I want you to remember something that we mentioned about inequalities, all right? Now, remember, this is the guided practice. This is just like when we are in the classroom. Remember that I check your notes at the end of the class. So everything that I write, I want to see in your paper that you submit, okay? All the notes. Complete with all the notes. All right. So we know that we have these symbols of inequality. I'm going to write these two over here. This one is, of course, less than, and this is greater than. I know you're going to say we already covered this, but we are just doing a recap, okay? And this is a skill that is very important for your next classes. When you go into your next classes in August, you're going to need this, all right? All right, so we have these two inequalities, and then we have these other two. And this one is, of course, called less than. Let me zoom in. There we go. Less than or equal to. Yeah, and this one is greater than or equal to. Okay, so let me just make these bold. And I hope you remember the story about the door, about the bar on the door. When you're graphing, we're going to be representing these with an open dot, okay? Because these have no bar on the door. I hope you remember the story about the bar on the door. If you don't remember, I will tell it later, okay? I mean, right before we continue. These ones, you see the little line right here? It's like I want you to pretend that there's a bar on the door, and when the door has a bar, it means that it's closed. So when you're graphing, you're going to represent these values with a closed dot. Okay? All right, and then of course, if we're graphing lines, these ones have a dashed line. And these ones over here have a solid line when you're graphing an equation. Okay? All right. Now, and if you remember, we started with the equalities. The first scale is divide, divide, because you solve just by dividing. You're trying to solve for x on this one. And for a moment there, you're going to pretend that the inequality here is like an equal sign, okay? Only for a moment, okay? Only for a moment, pretend you have an equal sign, so you follow the same procedure, divide, divide. So what do you do to solve for x? Divide, divide, because there's only this number right here, the -2, it's in the way. So how do we get rid of this -2? Because it's multiplying, it will be dividing. So that's why we say divide. And since we have to divide, if you divide on one side, you have to divide on the other. That's why we call it divide, divide, because you divide on both sides. By what? By this number right here. All of it, including the negative, okay? -2, -2. All right. Now, there was another story that I told you. What happens when you divide by a negative sign? There was a story about the evil eyes. These are like evil eyes. When somebody looks at you and makes evil eyes, you don't want to stay with that person. You turn away. Okay? So, if you turn away, you leave because the person has evil eyes. Pretend this is your nose and you're turning away. So, it means that you flip this sign right here. You flip it. So, when you bring it down, but you flip it because you're turning away. You don't want to go in that direction with the person that has evil eyes. You want to go. You want to leave. So when you're bringing it down, flip it. All right? Because you're dividing by negatives. All right? So let's continue with the operation. -2 divided by -2 becomes a 1, and now you have only the x. And 18 divided by -2 gives you -9. And this is your answer. Okay? All right. I don't want to make this video too large, so I don't have problems uploading. So I'm probably going to stop halfway, and the second part will be in another link. Number 2, solve and graph. So again, we're going to treat, here's the inequality. We have -3c less than -18. I'm going to pretend like this is our equal sign, only for a moment, in order to do the solving. So I want to solve for c. So in this one, they're asking us to solve and graph. So I want to leave the c by itself. So what is in the way? The -3. So how do I get rid of the -3? Divide, divide. Notice how when you use divide is because there's no plus and there's no minus sign between the -3 and the c. There's no sign. It means that two of them, these two, are multiplying. So the opposite or the inverse of multiplying is division. All right, so that's why we call it divide, divide. So divide by -3, divide by -3. Okay, what do we have here? Evil eyes, negatives. Okay, so you can either use the evil eye story or just say, are we dividing by negatives? Yes. So what do? Flip this guy. So instead, when you bring it down, remember to flip it to the other way, right? So -3 over -3 becomes a 1, and then you have c. And -18 divided by -3, the laws of multiplication apply to the division. All right, so we get a positive, what? 6. Just divide 18 over 3, and it gives you 6. And negative over negative gives you positive. Okay, so now here comes the part of the graphing and why this is important. You already practiced the graphing on equalities. So I have my number line right here. Okay, and it's telling me that the value of c is greater than 6. Okay, so this is our 0. Let's just count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is the 6 right here. Okay, so is there a bar on the door? No, it's open. So we're going to represent the value with an open circle. Now, to which direction are the values of c greater than 6? To the right, if we go to the right, like 7, 8, or if we go to the left, like 5, 4. Where are the numbers greater than 6? To the right. So we represent the graph like this. Okay. Another way of telling or identifying which direction do we put the arrow. Now remember, if you're doing your work, I'm going to check that you have your graph. Same with the independent practice. The arrow, it is important where it goes. Just look at the symbol right here. Pretend this is an arrow. So where is the arrowhead pointing to? To the right. right? Sorry for the repetition, but it helps you. So this is an arrowhead pointing to the right, this direction. So that's where your graph points, okay? All right, this is for the graphing. Let's do number 3. Solve for the following. Here we have an x. And now we have the greater than or equal to. So again, let's pretend this is like an equal sign only for a moment. I'm going to put it in quotes, okay? It's like an equal sign. So how do we solve for x? How do we get rid of 4? Divide by what? 4. This becomes a 1. Now, do we have negatives? Evil eyes? No. So we don't need to flip this one. So bring it down the way it is. Bring down the x. And what is negative 16 divided by 4? Remember, you can always do this in your calculator. If you don't know how to do it in your head, I'm doing it in my head because for me, for some of us, it will be a simple operation. So negative 16 divided by 4 is going to give you negative 4, and that is your answer. Remember, use the calculator from your cell phone. You can just put negative 16 divided by 4, and it gives you there, negative 4. I found this little calculator when I was doing my cleaning. Okay, all right, number 4. I think I'm going to stop here on number 4, and then I'm going to continue the rest of the exercises on the second part of the video. Solve and then graph. So again, we have an x. We need to solve for x. How do we get rid of the 9? Divide by 9 by 9. Do we have evil eyes? Do we have negatives? No. So we don't need to flip this guy. So just bring it down the way it is. And 9 over 9 gives you 1. So x is less than or equal to. What is 0 divided by 9? 0 divided by 9 is 0. Okay, so here's the answer. Now, they're asking us to graph. So I'm going to put the line right here. Here's the 0. All right. We have this symbol, bar on the door. If there's a bar on the door is closed. Now, the answer is telling us that the x, the values of x, are less than or equal to 0. Okay? Let me write it over here. Values of x are less or equal to 0. Okay? So, this is how you read this inequality. So, again, if this is your arrowhead, pretend this is an arrowhead. Where is it pointing to? It's pointing to the left. So here's your value of x. Okay? All the values that are less than or equal to 0, and with the closed dot. So the story about the bar on the door, just pretend you have a door. This is a door. And if you put a bar on the door, nobody can open the door. Okay, so that's why I keep saying bar on the door. Okay, let me stop the video right here, and I'll continue the second part on the other video. Okay, bye.